All right, so the Berlioz Symphony Fantastique is one of the early Romantic works. The other symphonies that are in our chapter are late Romantic works. In the late Romantic era, there's a nostalgia for what should have happened in the early Romantic era. So there is a lot of political revolution happening at the turn of the century all across Europe and in America, and all the ideas that the Romantic literature people were interested in, they lose. All of their revolutions fail. And so as we get to the late Romantic era, composers are kind of longing for what should have been, and their music tends to be kind of overly sappy in a lot of ways. So the work that we're going to talk about here is one of the symphonies of Gustav Mahler. Now, like Beethoven, Mahler wrote 9 symphonies and died. As a matter of fact, he tried to change the name of one of them to not being a number so that he wouldn't sort of invoke that fate. And he has a very, very tragic life in a lot of ways. He faced a lot of anti-Semitism as the head of the opera. He eventually comes and works with the New York Metropolitan Opera here, I want to say in about 1908, and is paid very, very well. He dies in 1911, so we're into the 20th century with the death of Gustav Mahler. If you look him up, he's most noted as a conductor during the time period. You'll see lots of racist, anti-Semitic caricatures of him, and he often faced votes of no confidence as the director because he was a Jew. And he wasn't just a Jew, he was a Bohemian gypsy Jew who spoke Czechoslovakian. So he spoke multiple languages. He was born in a place with multiple cultures were touching one another, and he just happened to be a Jew and a gypsy, which are not very good things to be at this time in or around Austria and Germany. So in Mahler's first symphony, he is using a musical program. Mahler is one of these composers who would put programs in his music, take them away, add them back. He never really made a decision one way or the other if his music needed to be programmatic or absolute. In Symphony Number 1, however, he does have a program that he doesn't really pull away, and it's called the Huntsman's Funeral Procession. It's essentially a symphonic poem. It eventually becomes a 5-movement symphony, and then it's revised into 4. The program's taken away, then it's put back. It's known for its distinct orchestration. Mahler is best known for his use of the orchestral instruments. As a conductor of the opera, he had free reins of the orchestra, and so he got very, very good at the craft of writing for the orchestra because he saw them every day. Now, the Huntsman's Funeral Procession is essentially a nursery picture where animals are shedding tears as they follow the funeral hearse of a hunter. There's pomp and ceremony. Innocuous qualities mask the incongruities of the music. Why are animals mourning their tormentor? It's inspired by Mahler's parody of a funeral march, which is what we're going to listen to in his, the third movement. So in the third movement, it starts off with a very, very familiar tune, a nursery rhyme, but instead of doing it in major, he does it in minor. And so instead of going do, re, mi, re, do, mi, fa, sol, he goes do, re, do, re, do, me, fa, sol. Okay, so he takes it from major to minor, makes it darker in nature as the pitches are lowered than compared to the major scale. Now, this is played in the low instruments of the double bass, and it's very, very dark and brooding in the strings. You've got the timpani drum playing behind it as well. And then it runs into this Volker dance band phrases that kind of deflate the mood of the funeral progression. And these dance band tunes are actually very closely similar to Jewish folk songs. So he addresses some of his anti-Semitism and the notion that he was overly emotional, like Jews were, too handsy, too emotional, too syrupy, too sweet. He does this, and he addresses this by not running away from it, but actually putting his Jewish heritage and folk music into the symphony itself in the funeral march. So the hunter is being buried by the animals. The funeral procession runs into this Jewish dance band. They cross each other, and eventually they overlap in a very, very magical moment. So as you're listening to Movement 3 of Symphony 1 of Mahler, which is the funeral march, please sort of take note when you hear the Jewish dance band and the Frere Jacques tune at the beginning, and when they pass each other up, and then when they play at the same time. Okay, so make sure you listen to Mahler Symphony Number 1, Movement 3, the funeral march. I'll have the link in the Canvas announcements for you.